You have seen Hanna Schygulla in one of the extraordinary range of roles that she played in films, in 23 films, I believe, by Rainer Werner Fassbinder in the course of a long career that began a career in film and theatre acting that began through a collaboration with Fassbinder when she, together with Fassbinder and Per Raben, was involved in founding Fassbinder's theatre group, the Antitheater. You worked for many years. I think Fassbinder had said on many occasions that he saw in you immediately the star quality that you were later to assume. And we'll talk a bit more about that in a moment. Of course, Hanna has many other careers as a filmmaker, as an actress and chanteuse who's worked with numerous other significant figures in European cinema, Godard, Carlos Saura, and others. We might have time to come to that later. But I think I'm enormously excited to have the opportunity to talk to you in a moment about this film. But I also wanted to just take one moment to introduce Julianne Lorenz, the editor who first worked with Fassbinder as an editor. I think you were just learning your trade when you first met him. No, assistant editor. Okay, you can tell us more about that in a moment. And then worked on him with 12 of his films until his very untimely death in 1982. And Julianne, as you heard earlier on, is now the president of the Rainer Werner Fassbinder Foundation and somebody who is responsible for many restorations, retrospectives like the one that has been worked on for some time with the BFI, and indeed the restored print of Maria Braun. But what I'm going to do now is just ask a few questions about the film, a few questions about your work with Fassbinder, and then I'm going to open it up to the audience. And I wanted to start with Hanna. You came to Maria Braun after a short break. You had worked with Fassbinder since the late 1960s, through his experimental period, through the period when he was working originally in theatre and then beginning his work as a filmmaker. But you took a break and then you came back to this role. I wondered what it was about this film that made it the one that you came back after 4 years to work with Fassbinder. Was it the film? Were there other factors that played?
Well, you said it was a short break. I felt it like a long break because I felt like I needed a break, but I didn't think it would be that long. Mm-hmm. He felt quite irritated or even hurt by that. He couldn't understand that, like somebody who was given all these parts, one after the other, so much part of his universe, wanted to get a break. What's that? So that was kind of it probably hit him on the spot. That was the softest. Like he, being able to trust in love. And it's not that I wanted to completely break up with him. I just wanted to get to meet myself. It was like we were part of the generation of '68, and we thought that the condition of man has to change, and society is not what it should be, and that we have to change it. And then came the other wave, and that was like, why don't we start by ourselves to change? And so I was busy trying to do that. And then it was not, I didn't even know what it was. He just said to me, I didn't read the script to say yes or whatever. It was it's just like he called, and he said, I said, who is it? I didn't even recognize the voice immediately. He said, Rainer. I knew another Rainer. So I said, what Rainer? And he said, what? What Rainer? So, okay, then it was clear it was him. And he said to me, just now I have something to you. And he said in this sort of ironic way, that I think you will agree finally to do with me. And so I haven't read it. I read the story then, and it's not that it knocked me over or whatever. Right. I thought it was, one of those stories. But then I knew that he would do something special with it, and especially at the point where I was working on myself, I thought that it's very interesting to come to the point zero in your on your way. You have to reach somehow the point zero, so you can change. And so this is why I said to him, I never argued with him about anything, because that was not the kind of relationship we had. So I said, does she really have to die? And because in the original script it was like she was consciously driving out of the road into a deadly accident. I think it was a bit inspired by Jules et Jim, because though I must say I blocked the end of Jules and Jim out, I didn't want to see that. So I didn't really remember that. I remembered other things about the film.
Can I ask, when you first read the script, I mean, these were extraordinary times in Germany, and Fassbinder, I mean, amongst the many things that he was, and that you all were really, was a political filmmaker. And this was a moment. The film came out in 1979, and it came out at a point where my understanding is that Fassbinder was very preoccupied with what has to be seen as a political crisis in Germany. And so he sets out, which was a moment where there were fears for the future of a West German democracy.
I can even now pick up, as you say it, what I'm saying about the point zero, because he once said that Germany has missing the chance to become really different, because it was like, we called it the hour zero or whatever, and we would have to have changed a lot of things. But then the economical miracle happened, and that everybody was so occupied to just rebuild wealth and had all these material things on mind, that the real work was not done.
And did you see it? I mean, because it's often been read, this film, as a kind of political parable, a story, and it was the first of his so-called BRD trilogy. So it was a series of films that Fassbinder made that were addressing the problems of building a democracy in post-war West Germany. And as you say, this is about the economic miracle and all the kind of forces that drive Maria Braun to her own destruction, ultimately. Did you feel it as a highly allegorical role, something where you had a sort of responsibility to represent something beyond the fate of this woman, or was it for you a story of Maria?
I must say that we all didn't quite realize what Fassbinder's work was really into. It sounds strange, but it was a bit like that.
But this was a story in lots of ways. There are lots of points where this is a story of your generation, I think,
Yeah.
the experience of the war.
It was like a bit like telling the story of my mother. So my mother had taken completely different choices in her life, but it was the period. It was this generation of women who had to rebuild Germany because lots of men haven't turned back, and then those who turned back were sort of unbalanced. That's the least thing you could say. They were really. My father, when he came back, he used to always say, "Life isn't worth anything."
Mm-hmm.
Like in a little. By the way, life isn't worth anything. They had seen so many. Destruction and being part of so much destruction that they couldn't. They were like crossing. They were going through life like strangers to life. So it was. I was conscious of that, and like always, there are always at least two person in one. In all the protagonists, and contrary. One is the contrary of the other.
And I wondered, Juliana, I wanted to ask you about the editing of the film, because one of the things that was striking me watching it again, and it was such a pleasure to see this film, which I have seen many times, but there are always new things in it. And one of the things that struck me is that what happens in the editing is that you have, on the one hand, this kind of pull towards a very personal story about a love affair. So you get cutaways, for example, to pictures of Hermann at the beginning quite often. So there's a sense that that's one of the forces that is pulling Maria Braun. But on the other hand, you get these cameos of rubble women clearing the rubble of the cities after the end of the war, or the kind of skirmish, the fight in the cafe at the beginning when she's first, I think, just about to go to the railway station. So we're constantly experiencing this pull between an individual love story, if you like, and something much bigger. I wondered how the editing process happened on this film.
I didn't think a lot about all these things. My situation was I had no assistant. I had a lot of material. We shot in Berlin.
Mm-hmm.
I immediately did the rushes by myself.
Mm-hmm.
I had even not, at that time we had numbers on the sound and on the picture. I didn't have any numbering and everything, and I was fighting with the material for myself. Being in a huge editing room, which was the whole production lived there just around the corner where I live today at the Kurfürstendamm. However, the story was the most important thing, and what I remember is that, as usual, Rainer didn't explain anything. There was a very good script, and I was now I'm a little bit naive to tell you that, but it was like that. I was very naive, and I thought it's a beautiful story, and it's the story of every woman in the life. There is a man you love, he vanishes, but he will come back. And then part I learned it's about Germany, West Germany. I mean, that's in the story. And then Rainer always was very sweet because he was so proud of every rushes. He even invited once Hanna to watch the rushes, and I understand it. She said, I don't want to see it. I'm too beautiful. I don't like myself. Yes, you said that. I don't like myself. So these little things, and we were in another world. And he was fighting in the night or whatever. He fought with the producers. It was a big financial problem there, and suddenly a new producer came up, but I shouldn't tell anybody that there is another one. And then I was again naive. Rainer, who is that? So it was a total different world. The editing room and the editing and Rainer's fights in the night because he was supposed to be the co-producer and he always took me with, and what do they talk about? So I was about 21 when I did this film.
Okay. Wow.
Sorry. And we did 2 films before, and I did 2 with, I was assistant to Chinese Roulette and Ballwieser, and that was a quick internship, I would say.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And suddenly, in despair, he said, "Oh, it was an English editor, and they were different, very different." And then the editor, Mr. Sir Reginald Beck, said, "I'm leaving." And suddenly, we edited the film together and made a totally different film out of it. So it was a learning process, and the film at the end, when we showed it, I can't even remember. I know I had once a flu, and I was really sick, and I said to Rainer, "I can't work," because he said, "I'm tired too." And then he went off, and then I presented him the scene at the evening, and then he said, "I told you, this scene when Hanna says this, from this print, I want to have it exactly in that moment." Okay, then I edited anew. So I was pushed into, that was all. And at the end, we were astonished what a good film that is.